AUs will always be fun to discuss. Even the most popular and common types of alternate universes feel fresh every time I see it, and that's largely because different creators give unique spins to every variant of the idea. As a result, every example of a type of AU feels exciting and engaging, no matter how overdone this AU is. And this isn't even counting for extremely specific and intricate AUs that are unlike anything else you've ever seen. And I think that's awesome! How cool is it that there is no one true way to execute a concept, that multiple people can create different versions of this concept, and they are all valid? It's incredible! Even if people use that power to imagine a world where high school is actually exciting. Yes, this video will be focused on the high school AU and also the college AU by technical association. High school and college AUs are two of the most ubiquitous and well-known types of AUs out there. But some might ask, why? School sucks. Why would you want to fantasize about a story in that environment? And that's a valid question. Well, today, I will be discussing both of these AUs, and we will be discussing the possible reasons as to why these AUs are so popular. Now, I would explain what a high school or college AU is, but I think the concept is pretty easy to grasp. It takes the characters from one story and places them in the setting of a school. Whether the characters are in high school or college is mostly based on the characters' canon ages. There is a variant of college AUs that is not as popular but is still notable, and that is a variant where the characters are rather college professors instead of students. This type of AU is usually only saved for characters who are much, much older, like, in their 40s. Usually these AUs utilize characters from more fantastical properties. However, there are examples of high school AUs that focus on characters who already go to a school. An example of this is, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Buffy the Vampire Slayer is a classic example of blending typical high school plots with supernatural threats. So a high school AU for Buffy would essentially remove those supernatural threats. Basically, high school and college AUs act out slice-of-life scenarios for these characters. Now, that doesn't mean all high school or college AUs are completely fluffy and wholesome, far from it. Many high school AUs embody the chaos and drama that arises from this genre. However, it is also incredibly common for these AUs to have a focus on comedy and, more importantly, shipping. Yes, unsurprisingly, these AUs are often associated with shipping, not just because shipping is such a massive, ungodly important force in fandom, but because of the nature of high school media, and I plan to talk about this a little bit more later, but this is the general basic of the concept. Now, it is important to note that while both of these AUs are popular, high school is generally the more favored of the two. I would mainly attribute this to several different explanations. Number one, many fandoms like Percy Jackson, Sailor Moon, Total Drama, Homestuck, Danganronpa, and more already feature largely teenage casts in extreme fantastical scenarios, so therefore it's fun to imagine them in normal everyday scenarios. Number two, high school is a very popular setting for storytelling, if the number of CW teen dramas is proof of anything. Number three, I fully believe most people who write high school AUs are either in high school or younger, and therefore are able to write about what they know or, what they think they know. Number four, it's much easier to write a high school AU than a college AU for one notable reason. High schools don't have majors. As someone who has graduated college, I can confirm that unless you already know a lot about the specific major you're writing for, it can be kind of a chore. At least high schools have a pretty consistent curriculum for every student. But now that we have a very basic idea of these AUs, let's discuss the specifics a little more using a few different franchises as examples. To start, I want to talk about Total Drama because I will never be allowed to shut up about this show. Total Drama is somehow a perfect encapsulation of 2000s teen dramas despite not being set in a high school. So naturally, the show has a lot of high school AUs. For other high school AUs, it's common for the writers to take the character traits and rework them to fit a high school trope. In most stories about high school, the characters have a very clear role and stereotype associated to them, and fanfiction often follows this. Antagonists are recharacterized as bullies, smart characters are the nerds, you get the picture, you've probably seen a teen movie before. Considering every character in Total Drama is based on these very mainstream teen stereotypes, it's not hard for people to decide the roles the characters will fit. For example, Heather's character archetype is the popular mean girl. Much like the show, in high school AUs, she is often a prominent antagonist. Usually, Chris and Chef, and sometimes Blaine Lee, are recharacterized as teachers, which is weirdly prophetic. Now, it may seem as if this concept is a little repetitive since total drama already took so much inspiration from teen dramas, but I think there are some fun storytelling challenges that arise with this kind of AU. Mainly the fact that removing the reality show looming over these characters' heads allows you to explore them at their most basic. The writers can play around with different scenarios between these characters and the ways they meet. The actual focus characters of the story mostly depend on which characters the writer prefers, since total drama is a massive ensemble cast. Well, it also depends on which characters the writer ships, because ships are a major facet of this fandom, and especially high school AUs. I guess I should elaborate on that now. Many of these AUs are explicitly focused on shipping. And this isn't really too surprising considering most teen dramas are focused around romantic drama as a central plot point. You know, love triangles, unrequited love, all that stuff. I'm admittedly not the biggest fan of these tropes, but I can't deny I see the appeal. It's about the heartbreak, the chaos. A well-written romantic drama can be super enthralling, and high school is a good setting for that kind of story because at that age, it really is that serious. This is also the case for college AUs to a degree. While high school AU romances tend to focus more on the chaotic storylines akin to, say, CW shows, most college AUs I see tend to be a little bit more interpersonal. I mentioned that high school and college AUs are usually used to give the characters a more slice-of-life experience. A great example of how this can be utilized is the Danganronpa fandom. Danganronpa is a franchise that largely focuses on a school setting, but notably does not feature any actual school stuff. So naturally, many people became fixated on the crumbs we see of a normal, happy life for these characters. So much so that these AUs have a special name in the fandom, non-despair AUs. They are basically just high school AUs at the end of the day, though. They were so popular in the fan base that they even have official spin-off material filling this niche, like the entire spin-off game Danganronpa S. Danganronpa S specifically is a whole game expanding on a side mode in Danganronpa V3 that was quite popular in the fandom. For context, this mode focused on an alternate world where the cast of all three main games, expanded to include the Ultra Despair Girls characters in Danganronpa S, all went to school together. We just get cute snippets of random vignettes between characters who could never realistically have these cute moments in the canon story, and it also included interactions between characters who never canonically had interactions. Considering the entire concept of Danganronpa surrounds character suffering, it makes sense that people would be attached enough to want them to have slice-of-life scenarios instead. Now, of course, there are also examples of high school AUs that are technically canon. Though they don't exist in the same vein as fanfiction, I think they are still worth analyzing in this wider conversation. A well-known example is the spin-off series for My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, known as Equestria Girls. Equestria Girls takes place in a canonical alternate universe where the main 6/7 are placed in a school environment. This spin-off is admittedly kind of the oddball when discussing the wider MLP franchise, because Equestria Girls was initially very poorly received, and only recently has it been looked at in a more positive light. The first two specials are also strange because they feature the Twilight Sparkle from the pony world going to the human world, well, human quote-unquote, and becoming human herself. Then the other two specials introduce a version of Twilight actually from this AU world. This spin-off also features typical MLP magical powers, breaking away from the expectation that high school AUs are usually completely slice of life. Admittedly, this series also has some magical girl elements because it also has transformation sequences, but that's unrelated. Anyway, my point is Equestria Girls is kind of an anomaly. While most canonical high school AUs are one-time things or parodies, Equestria Girls was its own entirely separate series. It even had ships unique to its lore. Not only that, but the spin-off added a unique element to Twilight Sparkle's character, that being the existence of Midnight Sparkle, an evil alternate identity. Admittedly, this character could have existed in the main series. The high school setting didn't really add much to her character, but the fact that the magic is more of a foreign element to this world does honestly make her existence more interesting. I don't know, Equestria Girls as a whole is so interesting to me. Another example of a canonical high school AU, one that I am admittedly quite fond of, is X-Men Evolution. X-Men Evolution is a show from the year 2000 featuring the X-Men cast, but get this, they're in high school. While the first part of the series mostly focuses on typical secret identity and a high school storylines, the later episodes embrace the true main theme of the X-Men franchise: discrimination. You see, at the beginning of the show, mutants are a secret to the world, but the show actually pulls a major status quo shift halfway through, as mutant kind, and specifically our main characters, are exposed to the world. They now have to navigate this terrifying time in their life, while still going to high school. I think the show is a pretty great example of a high school setting enhancing the themes of the intended story. High school, for many people, is a time of discovering who you are and what you believe in. This is something we see expressed through several characters in the show, such as Evan, Kurt, and especially Rogue. Honestly, this is one of the most interesting portrayals of the X-Men cast in my opinion, because this intersection between their mutant lives and their quote-unquote normal lives allowed for a lot of really complex storytelling and character exploration that was unique to usual X-Men stories. Now, these are examples of canonical high school AUs that explore the characters in the way a fan-made project would. They take the high school setting seriously. A large portion of canonical high school AUs are parodies. The Toy Chica, the High School Years intermission in Five Nights at Freddy's Ultimate Custom Night, and Romance Kingdom April Fool's event in Cookie Run Kingdom are both examples of high school AU parodies. Though the Romance Kingdom event is more of a parody of dating sim visual novels specifically set in a high school, and even then it's a pretty earnest parody, and Toy Chica, the High School Years is pretty obviously influenced from a specific simulator game that I refuse to name. And while I do think these parodies are funny, I do also think there is merit to actually exploring these characters in this kind of environment, especially in franchises with large casts allowing for a wide variety of stories to tell. I suppose I should also do a proper aside on college AUs, since the video has mostly been focused on the high school side of things. While college AUs are not as popular as high school AUs, they still have their own unique strengths. College AUs can also be a unique method of exploring characters' relationships and identities, but with an added sense of independence. College AUs also allow for characters to explore their independence or identity through college majors and minors. As someone who has been to college, I can confirm that a major can heavily affect a person's college experience. You can take some really ultra-specific classes in college, which is half the fun. But it also means that unless you're writing about a major you actually understand, you might struggle a bit. The expectations of majors are both a benefit and a curse for fanfiction writers. I'm going to give a very specific example of this. So recently, I have become extremely obsessed with the anime Gachiakuta, and specifically the ship of Jonka, that being the ship between Jabberwonger and Zonka Nijiku. Jonka shippers seem to have taken a particular interest in college AUs, and I have proof, I have data. So as I am writing the script, there are 1,888 Jonka fics, and there will probably be more by the time I post this. 267 of those fics are tagged as college AUs. That is about 14% of all Jonka fics on AO3, and pretty universally the fandom has characterized Jabber as a chemistry major due to his specialty with poisons. Now, it would be improbable for every person who writes about alternate universe chemistry major Jabber to actually know things about chemistry classes. Sure, you can research that stuff, but you can also take the easy way out of having the classes be a background element in the story. But then we turn to Zonka. No one seems to have a clear vision for Zonka's major, which affects the vision of different variants of this AU. Majors add an extra challenge of character analysis that high school AUs don't, but because media like Mean Girls or Heathers or, I don't know, fucking Riverdale, I guess, are fundamentally more popular than shows taking place in college, people tend to use that as their basis of inspiration. But also, I kinda would like to see more college AUs because I think they're cool. I often see people view high school AUs as an example of fanfiction cringe, and I think that's very reductive. I suppose it makes some sense since people tend to associate fanfiction with stupid ship war bullshit, and teen dramas aren't exactly the most artistically valued type of media. But even so, they are fascinating to me, because high school is a very formative time for most people, and for a lot of people, it sucked. But it's still fun to write about, whether to explore what a normal life would look like for these characters or for the pure chaos of teen and interpersonal insanity. High school and college AUs are definitely here to stay.